Hello, everybody. It's Nick.
And Chris.
We just finished recording this episode.
And just realized, content warning. If you never heard of any of these things, don't just waltz right into this.
Yeah, here's a little taste for you. Somebody eats poop.
Oh, no. No
Okay,
tastes.
never
just
mind. No,
really, it goes too far. If you're squeamish or you got whatever's going on, don't. Just don't. There's necrophilia. There's incest.
Don't give him a taste, Chris. You just yelled at me.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Don't.
Is there oh, yeah, no, there isn't. There's necrophilia.
But if you can stomach all of that, not to say that that's a virtue, or a sign of strength or anything like that. Just saying, if you've got the stomach for it, enjoy the show. Eating Soup Alone is a podcast hosted by me, Christopher Crumley, and co-hosted by Nicholas Johnson. We try our best to ramble incoherently about a handful of movies at least once a week. Sunday we hung out and watched Pink Flamingos and Blue Velvet.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, we did, in that order. Pink Flamingo while the sun was up, Blue Velvet after dark.
Yeah, I if I'm being honest, I'm surprised we watched Pink Flamingo.
Why?
Pink Flamingos. Because I just brought it up to you offhandedly that morning.
Yeah.
I think maybe I'd like to see this one day. And then you found it and like, cool, we're watching it. And I was like, oh man, I know people eat poop in this movie. I don't know if I'm in the mood for this, but I'm really glad we did.
Yeah. Well, I've been interested in John Waters for a while.
Star of Alvin and the Chipmunks 2.
Really?
He's in it. There's a scene where Alvin, the chipmunk, is on a plane next to John Waters and having a little argument about something. John Waters is like, that's just gross. And Alvin's like, don't talk to me. I've seen Pink Flamingos. It's like, this is Alvin and the Chipmunks.
That's pretty good. Did I say that I've been meaning to get into John Waters, or I've been into John Waters for a while?
I think you said you've been meaning to.
Yeah, meaning to. That's exactly the way to phrase it, because I've never seen anything until now of his.
I've seen him on The Simpsons. That's pretty much it.
My exposure was the public service announcements that I told you about that he did about the whole, isn't it lame that they don't let you smoke in movie theaters anymore? Anyways, doesn't it suck? You gotta sit through a whole... I can't remember exactly what he says, but it's basically that. And then also the iconic photo of him and David Lynch outside of a Big Boy, which was sort of the inspiration for me being like, oh, well, let's check Blue Velvet off of your list because you've never seen it.
Yep.
And, subsequent shout out to a quote I read later on where John Waters details quitting smoking. And at one point he says, it's the one thing the government didn't lie to him about. And then it's like, they'll kill you.
Yeah, I think my exposure to him was The Simpsons, and I think he was probably on like those VH1 I Love the 80s and shit like that.
There's a chance. I spent a lot of time as a child watching those.
Oh, watched them religiously.
Yeah, and I loved it. I was like, this is so cool. I don't want to get too pretentious right now because we're supposed to be talking about a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But that was one thing that I was just having a conversation about, which was like, again, theories, easily shot down, but we were both kind of in agreement that there's like a weird, sort of like it almost feels like we're losing grip on the context of the passing of time and the idea of eras or decades in a sense.
Yeah.
One of the, obvious like present day examples is kind of just like, oh, look at how little there was that there's not that much distinguishment from like maybe 2010 to 2020.
Yeah.
But also just in general, like, hanging out with, I have siblings. I'm the oldest of 10 and they're kind of, Gen Z-ish. And I hold nothing against them by any means. I'm not one of those guys who's like, oh, Gen Z. But there is definitely that thing where they seem to have a hard time I guess, grasping how different things were in a way.
Okay.
But yeah, also just, I don't know, that idea, and I think it's a good and a bad thing, right? Because like on the good side of things, like, you know, we've talked a lot about how, you know, things like Seinfeld or Friends have seen a resurgence, right? Everybody's into that kind of a thing. But I don't know, I guess it's just interesting because of the fact, to bring it back, because I know I've wandered out pretty far, I just feel like I was instilled with such a sense of the idea of eras or decades with shit like VH1. And like growing up and just being like, wow, badass yo-yos. The 50s were really bopping, but then the 60s, whoa, it really, now it's more of a fucking groove. And then the 70s, it got even more funky. And then the 80s, it was kind of coked out and neon. And, you know, 90s, now it's a little dirty.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little fucking dirty. And then in 2000, it's, oh, God. You know, polos tucked into jeans with white sneakers. This is weird, you know?
See, my thing is, and this might just be because these are the only times I'm alive in. I was there for a little bit of the 90s, but not a lot of it. But yeah, I have that same feeling. There's like a color palette and a smell and like an aesthetic to each, you know, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And like you said, 90s, ooh, it gets a little bit dirty. And then the 2000s is now to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I think about it real hard, I'm like, oh yeah, no, fashion was different and Game Boys were see-through.
Yeah, we kind of have to think about it kind of hard a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just feels like if you watch a movie from 2004, it feels like a current movie.
Yeah.
But it's 20 years ago.
Like, I'm not saying it to be hip or anything like that. I genuinely, like, still to this day, I'm like, oh yeah, 90s were 10 years ago. Oh, wait, no. I'm 25 now. That was a while ago.
Yeah, I saw someone say, I think on Twitter, but they were like, hey, the 80s are canonically 20 years ago, and I won't hear anything different.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
40 years ago now, yeah. Which is insane, because when I was a kid, 40 years ago was like the 60s.
Yeah.
You know?
1990 is as far away as 2050.
Wow.
Yeah.
And 2050 is when the world will no longer be inhabitable.
Yep.
So,
womp womp.
learn everything you can about sustainable living now, I suppose. Stock up on smokes.
Soup.
And also, if you get the chance, check out Pink Flamingos. What'd you think? I guess what piqued your interest first, actually?
As you know, I've been watching a lot of Red Letter Media. Just have it on in the background, sort of autoplay stuff. And one of their shows, a review, is where they talk about movies they've already seen.
Okay.
And then we're talking about it. And I've seen clips of it just all over the place for forever.
I guess what clips get taken out of context and shared around? I've never seen a clip float around. Like, what's something you were exposed to?
Just divine science stuff. Just heard good quotable moments.
Yeah, little gifs and shit like that, or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, you know, like everybody knows the movie ends with her eating dog poop.
I had not known that until you said it to me.
And so it wasn't a movie I wanted to see. I knew about it, and I'd read about it, and like read about all the fucked up shit that was in it. And then I heard the RLM guys talk about it. And,
you're at that point.
I'm deep. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just Red Letter Media is too many letters, too much to say. I don't got that kind of time.
BNL.
And fundamental.
Yeah.
And yeah, they talked about it, and I was like, it's probably a movie I'm probably going to check out one of these days. I don't know when.
Yeah.
I might. And then, 12
Well, yeah, I guess you really didn't know when.
12 hours later, I was talking to you about it, and 13 hours later, we were watching it.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
From my understanding, the general consensus for making it was John Waters was like, I want to be, well known for making the most fucked up movie I possibly can, and it worked. And he absolutely is. I can't tell you what any of his other movies are or called.
Polyester's one.
Okay,
that's one I definitely want to check out. I know that this one, Pink Flamingos, is the first of 3 in the Trash trilogy.
Cool.
So here's a little shallow knowledge I've gathered.
Yeah, I didn't know how much I would like it, because I'm not a huge fan of shock for shock's sake. But also, at the same time, I feel like that stuff kind of takes a little bit of a back seat to everything I enjoyed about this movie.
Really?
It feels very much so like just people making a movie. And and the story's ridiculous. You gotta kind of have one foot out of reality for it, but I like it. And it was surprisingly very, very, very funny. I laughed out loud a few times in it. And it's not even so much like just the gross shock value. Some of that stuff.
Yeah, and usually we sleep good as shit.
Yeah. Oh, it's like just delivery and absurdity of lines and stuff like that. Like, Divine, what are your political views? Kill everyone now. It's so good. I love it.
Or what's the I can't remember the exact wordage when she's like, you stand charged with the crime of assholism.
Yeah. Or even just her mom who sits in a baby cage in her underwear.
Where's the Eggman?
And just wants eggs and is in love with the Eggman.
I'm starving. When's the Eggman gonna come?
As long as there are chickens laying eggs and I can't remember the quote. But as long as there are chickens making eggs and cars rolling and feet walking me, I'll be bringing you your eggs.
But what if there were no more chickens? Then there'd be no more eggs. It could happen. But anyways, I think when we first set out to watch it, I found a free stream of it that was in just dog shit quality. Pun intended.
Oh, nice.
And it also had, who knows, Croatian subtitles. No idea, right?
It was Spanish, you racist.
And don't get me wrong, I was eating it up. Pun intended. But you mentioned it and you're like, oh yeah, this feels exactly like something we shouldn't be watching.
Yeah. No, it was it's so funny.
And that's how I'd sum up the movie. It's one of those odd things that, I mean, I guess it's the 70s, so what we just discussed how the 80s were 40 years ago. Wild to see something that's 50 years old and it still feels like something you shouldn't be watching.
Yeah.
It still feels almost like a secret, right? Like you found something.
Yeah.
This is probably the most in my life that I've ever felt like, oh shit, I found a cult movie, Because a lot of movies can be called cult movies, but it's like that thing you're always talking about with like, oh, you guys don't even know about Thundercats. And you're like, yeah, I fucking know about Thundercats. And I feel like a lot of cult movies have that status, right?
I've seen VH1s. I love the 80s. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
But even things like I don't know, and just thinking off the top of my head of even like I guess like Donnie Darko or like Big Trouble in Little China or like Evil Dead, even like they're at such a level where like you'll be watching fucking the reboot of iCarly and like here comes Spencer in like an Evil Dead 2 t-shirt or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Again, like I said, I know of John Waters. I personally have never actually heard anyone say anything or make any reference to Pink Flamingos that at least stuck with me, I guess. Right, so it really does feel like a thing that's just under the radar. And you're right. The shock doesn't necessarily stick with me. I don't know. I don't know how to describe this shock because it is offensive and fucked up, but also it never seems like intentionally like nasty in a mean sense, or like malicious, right? Like it's almost like we should have paired it almost with like Seven, right? Because it's almost the polar opposite of Seven, but inside of the same lane.
Okay.
Right, because they're both movies that are going for the shock, right?
Yeah.
But Seven's like, oh, isn't this dark and fucked up? And Pink Flamingos is much more playful, where it's like, look, we're dark and fucked up, And I think overall it's a very charming movie, and I think to this day it's still again like shockingly subversive.
Yeah.
And another conversation I was having, independent of you, because I have relationships outside of our friendship.
What?
But we were just kind of discussing that, like, I know it's not often, but it's just one of those things where, like, I don't know how to describe how subversive it still feels, and yet I feel like a lot of the stuff that's in it is a lot more commonplace these days. Like, to a degree, you could see stuff almost in that realm on Adult Swim like any night.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you're just kind of talking about how like mainstream like subversion and also even things just like, let's take away from the subversion, but even like camp have become, in a sense, right? And like Hollywood's trying to like kind of bank off of camp right now with like things like Cats, or whatever, And like I say, or rather to clarify what I'm saying, it's so interesting to see such a raw, pure form of something that I see in a much shallower sense everywhere these days, right? So like I said, I like the movie quite a bit. I would recommend it, but with quite a bit of caveat. You know,
it's it to bounce off what you're saying. I definitely get that, but there are definitely large chunks of this, and it makes it feel overall where I'm like, I have never seen anything like this movie.
Yeah.
And that's what really gets me about it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there are, all the weird, gross shit that, you're right, you could see on Adult Swim. But there are still scenes like the chicken scene where I'm like,
I'm never going to see that again in my lifetime unless I rewatch Pink Flamingos.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to. I definitely don't. It was hard to watch.
That was very hard to watch. Not to say I agree with John Waters, but in that we watched a version that includes like 20 years later, like, hey, here's some cut stuff. And he mentions like, people were always mad at me, like, how could you do that to a chicken? And he's like, well,
I eat chicken.
I eat chicken.
I think his exact quote is, I don't think it got on my plate from a heart attack.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, all right, I guess. Yeah. But also at the same
time.
Not
to say I agree with him necessarily, but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, okay, you're in a gray area where I'm not going to tussle there, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not gonna fight you on this, John Waters.
I'm not going to fight you on this chicken.
I think I am stealing this from Red Letter Media. Very sorry. But I think it's just a great way to sum up this movie and what I think is so good about it.
Mm-hmm.
One of them said they watched this back-to-back with Clerks when they were like 13.
Which is very funny because you have not mentioned this to me yet, and already off the bat, I was going to say that it has a very big Clerks quality to me, which kind of ties into the thing you were saying earlier where it's like, you're watching something that just people were just woke up one day and they're like, oh, we're making a movie.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And it's got the same kind of charm, I think.
Yeah, what they said was they're like, I watched Clerks, and I was like, oh, anyone can make a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched Pink Flamingos, and I was like, oh,
anyone. Yeah.
Anyone can make a movie about anything.
Okay, yeah. And, that's an interesting quote, yeah.
And it just feels like a guy and all of his friends decided to make a movie. I think the budget was like $12,000 or something like that.
A little bit more in 70s dollars. But, today it seems like, but it would have been a little bit more in 70s dollars, but still it's nothing.
Yeah, and a lot of shit that very much so is like by the way, like you can see like posters and stuff on the walls and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, this is just somebody's house.
Yes, I kept thinking that. I was like, is this John Waters' house?
Yeah.
Like,
and then they burned that trailer at the end. So either $11,000 of that budget went to the trailer, or they just found that trailer. Yeah. Like, it's just sitting in this field already. We can light it on fire, and no one will know.
Yeah. It also plays a bit like, just as a side note, I didn't know where to squeeze this in. The whole idea of like, oh, Divine is the nastiest person alive, and then there's the Mabels or Marbles or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Marbles. And, they got the red hair and the blue hair, and I was like, they're Team Rocket. This is an episode of He-Man. It's just Skeletor and Skeletor's wife being like, no, we're going to fuck up He-Man's thing just cause, and that's kind of, I was, the whole time I was like, wow, it's like so like, just a group of people being like, yeah, but our version of it.
Yeah, it is. It's so goofy. I love it. It's so it's so goofy and so over the top that one of the main plot points in the movie is that these two people kidnap teenage girls and their butler rapes them and they sell the babies to lesbian couples, and it's
not even the first thing I think about when I think of the movie.
Exactly. And when it happens, sometimes I'm like, this shit's kind of funny.
I will say the lady in the basement who's like berating the butler the whole time, she probably acts the best, and also it is kind of, again, like fucked up funny. Because the whole time she's just like, you bastard, how could you do this to me? Oh, I bet you're going to kill her too, aren't you? Why don't you get this fucking body out of here?
There's a dead girl down here for 3 days. You can't
and the
even
way
get
she's
her out
just
of here?
standing there, she's just holding her pregnant baby, and it's awful. And it reminds me of the book you just read, American Psycho.
Yeah.
Which would naturally segue into us talking about American Psycho, but it's going to take a side.
Yeah.
It's going to hit the bench for a second, just because
we gotta find another movie to pair with.
I would much
fit together. Really
no
well.
Disrespect to that film, it's great, but as immediately after watching these two, I was like, these are the ones we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
These are the ones. We're gonna talk
I don't
about.
got a lot to say about American Psycho.
I also don't. I was even thinking like maybe we could squeeze it in 3 to an episode, but neither here nor there. Let's watch Heathers or something with it.
Okay.
And proceed.
And like, yeah, it does very specifically with the butler and the girls in the basement. It definitely pushes it over the edge for me, where I'm like, I do think it's kind of funny that the butler's like, I don't want to touch these girls. I gotta find out a better way, and he's just jerking off into a syringe, and I'm like, that's pretty funny. And then they show him put the syringe in the knocked out girl's vagina. And I'm like, I don't find this funny anymore.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think the tagline sums it up the best: an exercise in bad taste.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, that is funny, and you're like, oh wow, they're really gonna take it there. But you never, as offensive as it is, it never got to the point where maybe it says more about me than whatever. But yeah, it was just always like, okay, well, I'm gonna let it slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I felt the whole time I was watching. I was like, I'm gonna let it slide.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I guess it's the 70s.
I will say, there's also a scene where Divine blows her son.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
But honestly, yeah, the thing that was honestly probably the hardest to stomach, whatever, was probably eating the dog shit. But mainly because Divine spends a lot of time like pushing it through her teeth and like with her tongue and stuff. And I was like, oh my god, they're really, 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 really trying to.
Yeah, that shit. The chicken stuff got me more.
You think so?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely fucked up. But God, because I just like. That's so much more sensory. Like, I could imagine it in my mouth. I could imagine what it tastes like.
Yeah.
Imagine not only not immediately spitting it out, but instead playing with it in your mouth. And I'm like, oh my God. But you're right. Cruelty to animals is definitely worse. Something we have not mentioned yet that I would like to shout out real quick. The way that John Waters affects as the narrator.
Yeah.
Something so funny about it. At the end when he's like, and now, dear audience, I assure you, this is the real thing.
Yeah.
Divine just goes for it.
Also, fucking so unbelievably funny to me. I don't know why, but because it's so out of... I think, even everything we've said in this movie, this is just so out of left field to me. But at one point, they call the cops on Divine and her family at a party she's throwing, and you just saw a dude almost prolapse his asshole.
Yeah, that was wild. I forgot about that. Yeah,
that was wild. And then the cops show up and they eat the cops.
It was such a funny scene though, because it's set to a song, and they all hide inside of the trailer until the cops come up. Then they come out with weapons. They beat the cops to shit, and then they eat them.
Like even you just saying it right now, I'm like. I'm just it's so absurd.
Probably my favorite scene.
It's so fucking funny.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna rate it.
Yeah.
An X.
Nice. Hell yeah.
Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I don't think
and also, I'm sure I said it already, charming.
I wouldn't say it's charming.
Yeah, I'm gonna say charming. It's got a charm.
Okay. Yeah, I can agree with that. I think. I don't know what I would rate it. I don't think this is a movie I can rate.
That's what I was saying. I kept thinking about it. I was like, fuck it. It's an X.
Yeah, I guess.
In the best way possible, not in a bad way.
I don't think I don't know if I know anybody in my life besides you that I'd be like, oh yeah, you should watch Pink Flamingos.
Yeah, I don't know, but I can't wait to see.
As soon as I meet that person, I'm hanging on to him for dear life.
Yeah, it's curious, right? Like, because you recommend so often and people will not necessarily take it up, but imagine that's the time they do.
Yeah, and there's just something about like even I talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but it's like it's a movie where someone eats dog poop at the end. As much as I don't want to see that, there's a part of me that's like, I gotta see that movie. Like, isn't it part of the Criterion Collection?
I don't know if that one specifically is in. I couldn't necessarily confirm, but there are at least 3 in there. I want to say Pink Flamingos is. Yeah, I want to say Pink Flamingos is.
So fucking funny.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, day turns into night.
I eat a breakfast sandwich. We make some coffee. We have an intermission.
Suddenly the sky is a beautiful blue, velvety sort of tone. Not necessarily texture, but tone. Shade. And we watched Blue Velvet.
I'm just trying to think of something I could say. I was like, yeah, and then I heard something with my ear, but I couldn't get something that was funnier than that, and that wasn't even funny.
Yeah. How the anticipation going into this thing? Excited?
I was very excited. As someone who likes David Lynch a lot, I haven't seen a lot of his movies.
Yeah.
And I'm always hesitant to, because I'm like, I gotta be in the right mood for it.
Mm-hmm.
And this and Eraserhead both.
Mm-hmm.
I watched them. I'm like, No, not really.
Yeah.
They both feel way more. Everything I watch from David Lynch is way more straightforward than I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Like there are still, weird David Lynch bits in it, but at the same time, I'm always expecting, Twin Peaks season 3 for some reason. But yeah, this is a movie I've been meaning to watch for years and years and years and years. And the anticipation for it is so high that I just never really got around to it. And then, yeah, just the same day as Pink Flamingos, I was like, I gotta watch Blue Velvet. I just really got a hankering to be like, I want to watch this movie. And then I said it to you when we did our double feature. And I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Love me, Kyle MacLachlan, and anything that he's in, especially David Lynch stuff. I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it again 1,000 times more probably. Would have made a real cool Superman at any point in his life. I think he'd make a cool old Superman. That's not what we're talking about. I love it for all the reasons I like all David Lynch stuff. It just has a tone and it has a stink to it. It just shit happens that bums you out, but at the same time, I can't stop watching.
Yeah.
I don't think it is. I don't know. I want to say subtle as I thought it would be, but I can't really think of David Lynch stuff that's subtle. But like, yeah, we just started it, and it shows this beautiful, serene, picture-perfect neighborhood. Colors are really beautiful.
Popping.
It really pops. Feels very dreamy and stuff like that, and then it like closes in on a lawn, and he gets like closer and closer. And then just underneath the surface, there's all these gross bugs that are making all these weird sounds and stuff like that. And I was like, all right, this is a little much for me. But then, yeah, I loved it as it went on. I don't have a lot to say until we get into like the nitty gritty of it. So, Chris, what do you think about Blue Velvet? This is the second time you've seen it, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I also don't necessarily know where to start except to say perhaps the thing I'm going to say about it mirrors your opinion about David Lynch. Like, I feel like I should have something way more, wild to say about it, but it just reminds me, and it feels so exactly like taking a walk late at night. There's just like Kyle MacLachlan at one point says like, I'm involved in a mystery. I'm in the middle of a mystery. And I just feel like anytime that you're walking around at night, you feel like just at any time like a car might pull up and ask you to get in, and suddenly you're in the middle of this fucking thing. Or like, a door might open and someone comes out and they're like, what do you think about this? And you're like, I don't know. And they're like, well, come on in here and help me figure this out. And you're like, oh, okay. And, the next thing you know, and that's just kind of how, maybe, I don't know. That's how I feel, I guess, when I walk in. It's happened before. Like, a little anecdote. One night, me and Steve, an old friend, we're driving out to Port Huron, about an hour away from where we live, and I think we had the intent of going to a cafe called the Raven, which is this neat little. It's actually kind of a fucking restaurant. We didn't know that at the time. That it kind of has this like old bookstore, kind of Hogwartsy kind of vibe. Okay. Feels weird to say a Hogwartsy in an adjective sense, but you get what I mean. And it's modeled a bit around like the Gothic and the Edgar Allan Poe, hence the Raven. And it's just 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, probably early fall, pretty dark already. Get out there, it's closed, but whatever. We're enjoying the drive and just kind of chatting, and we pull up to this red light. We got the windows down because we're smoking, because we were 19 and cool. And there's just a guy in all black sitting in the street corner. Could be, I'm going to pull another hack apple off the hack tree, but homeless or hipster. No way of knowing until, he's like, hey, and he's like, could you guys give me a ride real quick? And Steve was like, sure. So the guy gets in the back seat, and then obviously it's a little stinky. I don't mean to be mean. And we were like, okay, well, homeless. And just for like, 15, 20 minutes, we're like driving around, and we're like, hey, dude, where do you want to go? And he's like, oh, just up here. And we're driving around, and he's like, where now? And he's like, take a left or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And, definitely at this point, my mind's starting to race a little bit, like, okay, he's behind me. What if he's got a knife and he just stabs me in the neck or something? This is crazy. And it's very quiet. We're not really talking to him. He's not really responding to questions we're asking. And we're just like, where? And, here. And, suddenly we're like in this little, like, like condominium complex. And, we're just like in the middle of a parking lot driving, and he's like, which house? And he's like, what, just right here or whatever. And so we stopped just in the middle of this parking lot by like a dumpster, and he got out, and we were listening to some song that said like "God damn" or something like that in it, and he goes, you really shouldn't listen to music that blasphemes like that, and then closed the door and walked off into the night. And then we drove home. And so that's obviously not as fantastical as a David Lynch film or whatever, but it's just one of those things. That's what Blue Velvet feels like to me.
Yeah, I buy that.
Yeah.
This is going to be a little bit of a tangent, but it's a story that yours reminded me of. I wasn't there for this. It's a story of, like, my gang of friends after, like, I don't know, we're, like, what, like 15? Like, none of us can drive yet. And I split off from them, and they go fuck off into the night. And they, like, walk to a friend's house who lives on 8 Mile, and then they walk back up to, like, 25, I think. And then they're walking back to that guy's house again because, you know, they're just young kids with nothing to do. Let's just walk around. And I think it gets to, like, 3 in the morning. And they're, like, just... No buses are running that late or anything like that. So, and they're, like, too tired to walk. So they're like, okay, we'll sit down on this bench. We'll sleep for 15 minutes. And we'll keep walking until we get to another bench. And we'll sleep for 15 minutes. And we'll walk to another bench. And we'll sleep for 15 minutes. And they do that, like, 2 or 3 times... And they get to, like, I think the movie theater on 15 and Gratiot. And a guy in a car pulls up and goes, hey, Justin. That's the guy whose house they were going to. They're like, I know your mom. No, I don't even think he said his name. He was like, hey, I'm friends with your mom. And he's like, yeah? He goes, yeah, we used to go to high school together. I know her, all that. And, you know, what are you guys doing out here? They're like, just trying to get back home. And he goes, I can give you guys a ride. They're like, I don't know, man. And he's like, no, seriously, I'm friends with your mom, which is exactly what someone who's trying to kidnap you says. And he goes, and look, I went to, here's like a Clintondale school ID. I used to go there, and I was a Marine. Here's my Marine's ID, so you know I'm on the up and up, which... and they're all so fucking tired. I think it's like 5 of them that they're like, yeah, fuck it. And they get in this guy's car, and he's just driving down Gratiot, and he's like taking the long way or something like that. And one of them goes, listen, man, we've had a really long night, and we're super tired. It's just, if you're going to kill us, just kill us. And he's like, what? And he's like, none of this adds up. We just if you're going to do something, just do it. He goes, no, I'm taking you guys fucking home. And he just brought him to their friend's house and fucking left. Hung out with his mom for a bit and then left. That was it.
Wild.
I will say this is probably my least favorite thing I've seen from David Lynch.
Okay.
But I liked it nonetheless. I liked it a lot. It was just missed anything I was expecting from a David Lynch thing.
It's a very contained David Lynch story.
Yeah. Like, I feel like what I love the most about David Lynch stuff is A, atmosphere, and B, just the, I guess, the abstractness of parts and bits. And like we talk about it all the time. But my favorite thing very much so about Twin Peaks is, you know, everybody has a different idea of what happens in Twin Peaks. And I really like that. And yeah, I feel like Blue Velvet is very, very, very straightforward. And I said that about Eraserhead. I think Eraserhead's pretty straightforward as well. But there are a lot of things here and there in Eraserhead that you're like, I think this is what's going on here. And someone else can have a completely different thing and be like, oh, that's cool to think about it that way. But I feel like Blue Velvet, I know what happens to Blue Velvet. Yeah. You know what happens to Blue Velvet, and it's pretty much straightforward.
Yeah.
I do like little weird unexplained things that you can like fill in the blanks with your own head, which is what I was basically just saying. There are a few of those in here, but it's to a lesser degree, I guess.
Yeah.
Like Frank with the mask. What's he doing with that? Is that drugs? Does he need that to breathe? Is that how he jerks off? I don't know, but I like it. There's the weird house that they bring Kyle MacLachlan to after he catches him with his girlfriend. There's the guy that sings, and that's where they have her son and stuff like that. It's like, what's going on in this house? I don't know. I love it. Why is this guy's face 6 shades lighter than the rest of them? I don't know, but I like it. I feel like I talked for a while. Go on, say something.
You're right. I think that this is a movie that doesn't, I don't know what the turn of phrase would be like, I guess like bury the lead at any point or anything like that.
Yeah.
You know, finds an ear in a field. That's pretty wild and zany and like, oh, what could that mean? But it really just actually serves a plot purpose in the sense that it's Frank's got this jazz singer's husband and kid held hostage, and it's been cut off of her husband. Right. So it leaves kind of little to be interpreted unless an ear is supposed to mean something. But I just kind of get the sense in the film that, like, if that were the point, it didn't really push that point or pursue that point too much. Kyle MacLachlan plays a young boy who's displaying a trait that it seems like a lot of movies kind of give to young boys. I don't really feel like I ever necessarily went through a hard voyeurism phase, but
absolutely not.
That happens very frequently. I mean, not to call the man a boy, because I think, what was it, like Rod Stewart? No, that's a fucking singer. But the guy who was in damn Rear Window or whatever is all about him binocular spying on people and whatnot.
Fun fact, in the 80s, Rod Stewart had to get his stomach pumped because there was so much semen in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think that's just an old wives' tale, but...
Yeah. But anyways, so he's, wants to sneak in. There's a kind of good scheme that, or whatever, where they're like, oh, you're going to be a Jehovah's Witness, and I'm going to go spray this jazz singer's whatever, and steal her keys, or Jimmy the Window or whatever, and he ends up in the closet. And all of those things are fine, like I said, from like a plot functionality kind of thing. It does operate on like light dream logic, where you're like, this is it's almost, like the Pink Flamingo, like camp to a degree, right?
Okay.
And yeah, like I say, like, I don't know, there's just moments, right? Like, I really do like him in the closet, and like as he gathers all these things, where she's on the phone and she's crying and she's pulling that out of underneath the couch, and she's getting undressed and taking the wig off. Wig only comes off once in the movie, very odd, right? There's a lot of little odd things like that stay with me.
I really like the scene of him in the closet, because it keeps cutting back to him in the closet to remind you that he's there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see her doing all of her stuff, it's not like you're ever watching it like
through slits or
anything like that.
Slants.
It's always just that. Well, I don't think it's always. I think it might change here and there. But the camera, whether it zooms in or not, stays in that spot. So the whole time it feels like you are watching this person in a way that you're not really supposed to be watching. Like, she takes her robe off and she walks down the hall and she's in the bathroom, and you just see her on the left side of the screen and the little slit between the hallway and the bathroom. Until, she eventually finds him. Which, why wouldn't... That, again, it's like you said, it's dream logic, but that got me. When she, like, walked towards the closet, he, like, wouldn't hid on the other side, but when she eventually opens it, he doesn't move at all.
Yeah.
Very strange. I feel like I cut you off.
Oh, no, not necessarily. There's also the double Ed, the two workers at his dad's hardware
store. Yeah.
And for some reason, the blind man's the one who... always rings stuff up and can tell, how many fingers. I guess he's got the
forgot about them. Or maybe he's not blind.
Yeah.
He's a liar.
What else happens? There's the sort of classic jealousy scene, which features a memory that, at least from the art life, I gather is a real memory of David Lynch's. It says his earliest memory is being outside after dark with his brother. He's very young, like 5, riding bikes and whatnot, and he just remembers a woman with blood all over her coming out of the forest, and just his mom coming outside and being like, oh my God, what's going on? And taking him inside and stuff like that. Him just being fascinated with that.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. And so, it's an interesting thing, I think, honestly, where, like, I don't know, again, like kind of dream logic or whatever, where like she shows up in the middle of Laura Dern's boyfriend being like, you fucking stole my fucking girl and stuff like that. And he's like, what is that, your mom? And then by the end of it, he's like, hey man, I'm sorry. I didn't know. But didn't know what? Like, that you had so much going on in your life, I guess, so that you're a human being. Is it supposed to be a humanizing moment to be like, hey, everybody's got shit,
Yeah.
And then there's just like horribly awkward moments that work almost on a comedy level, like when she's naked in Laura Dern's parents' living room and the mom comes in and she's just like, he put his disease in me.
Yeah.
And I kept shouting, and I was like, she doesn't fully understand. I think she's being a little more symbolic. I don't have a disease. I'm not going to give your daughter a disease. I don't know what she's talking about entirely.
She's really eccentric, I promise.
Yeah.
I do love what we talked about this while we were watching it. I love like stopping to think in the middle of the movie and being like, oh, Kyle MacLachlan's spinning a lot of plates here.
Mm-hmm.
He's seeing a girl who has a boyfriend.
His dad's in the hospital.
Yeah, first of all, he's in college, came to town because his dad's in the hospital, is seeing a girl who has a boyfriend, and is now seeing this other girl who caught him in her closet, and by all accounts, she thinks he's just a pervert and also an exterminator, who is spying on her. And she also has a boyfriend, but also she has a husband and a child.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get to the bottom of this mystery. It's like, man, these guys are deep.
And, just thinking out loud, whatever. There's weird stuff, too, with, like, Frank being in an abusive relationship with her, but then also she's characterized as someone who's almost, like, seeking abuse, right? Because she keeps begging Kyle MacLachlan to hit her. And I'm not going to venture so far out to say anything about that necessarily, but, there are some things in there that'll provoke them, make you think a little bit or whatever. Neither here nor there. And, you get that. I actually genuinely love... Well, before we get to the third act, which I do love, I will finish my statement and say it's the third act that I want to talk about. But before that, I also like that whenever he's talking to Laura Dern's detective dad, there's always this air of like, I don't know, is he in on the conspiracy? It kind of feels like Kyle shouldn't be talking to him. It doesn't really feel safe anytime that he's talking to him, especially as like one of the guys involved in the conspiracy is like his partner and keeps showing up and stuff. But I do like that it ultimately comes to them like gunning down Frank's place, but Frank isn't there. And then it doesn't feel like a huge thing, but it's whatever that like he's the well-dressed man like in disguise. Because why is he in disguise necessarily?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's not answered. What's that?
I said I kind of called it too. Mm-hmm. They show a picture of them, and you see the well-dressed man.
You're like, looks like a guy in disguise.
Yeah, he's got these big eyebrows and this big mustache, and I thought that was just a funny-looking guy. I'm like, this looks like a man who was wearing a disguise. Turns out he's a guy wearing a disguise.
But specifically, I love when he shows up the apartment, and there's the guy standing over there, like his brain's blown out, but he's still standing, and he's got the walkie-talkie. And he clues in the detective, but Frank's also got one. And then, like, the man missing the ear, who is the jazz singer's husband, is, like, sitting there dead. And, like, especially, like, I love that he, like, tries to play it off like he's gone to the back bedroom to hide and hides in the closet. And the whole time, just Dennis Hopper being great. Just like, oh, you dumb fuck! I've got a radio, too! God Christ, you dumb piece of shit!
You didn't even turn the radio off? Oh.
Yeah, god damn! Great. And, then it's over, and it almost has this, like, ending akin to, like, I don't know, classic movie, like, and it was all a bad dream, and now it's a good dream,
Firefighter waving at you on the truck as he passes.
Yeah. And, I don't know what else to say outside of, maybe perhaps, like, I guess not from this movie because it would not work in Blue Velvet, but I almost want to see a little more of the daytime suburb that David Lynch paints.
Yeah.
Not in this movie because I do like that you start there and then you spend the whole movie in the trenches, right? In the actual dark, right?
Yeah.
If it were a story circle, it's the subconscious or whatever, yada, yada, yada. And, at the end of the day, I would say favorite thing David Lynch has done, perhaps not, but I love this movie, and I'd probably give it a nice, B plus A.
Oh, yeah, same. I feel like, I've been speaking kind of negatively about it, but no, I really enjoyed this movie. It had me the whole time. I would say my favorite character in it is in the scene where they're, like, at the, like, factory or whatever at night, and they're beating the shit out of Kyle MacLachlan, and they play the song, whatever that song is called, I don't remember. And that woman gets out of the back of the car and gets on top of it and starts dancing.
About that, yeah.
She's my favorite character.
Yeah, I do like that scene a lot, especially once Dennis Hopper puts the lipstick on his mouth and he starts, I'll send you a love letter to your heart in dreams. I'm walking with you and all that. Yeah, that's real neat. Yeah. And overall, movie, it's neat. I'd recommend it to people. Oh, but almost in a similar vein to the Pink Flamingos thing, as straightforward as it is, I also feel like there's a degree to which, like, speaking generally and potentially being an asshole, like, do you think it would have enough hooks to just get the average moviegoer? Yeah.
Blue Velvet, for sure.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Because I don't know who I'd recommend it to that I'd be like, oh, they'd love this.
I don't know if
I feel like they'd be like, oh, it's okay. It's fine.
Yeah, I feel like people, I would say,
would be unoffended by it.
From everything I've seen, this is the most accessible thing I've seen from David Lynch.
Well, first season or two of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, but like I said, there are bits in Twin Peaks where it's like, what the fuck is going on? And I never once...
And also it feels so much like a soap opera that can turn people off.
Yeah.
Like, I know for a long time we have a mutual friend who's always been like, it's a show about people fucking each other. I don't want to watch this.
Yeah. But I think that first episode of Twin Peaks is
Literally a movie. It's perfect. I love it.
It is perfect, and I do love it, but I think it is tough for somebody who is into David Lynch to get through. Like, I watched that first episode 3 or 4 times before I watched
the rest of the show. I'll agree with that, yeah.
I remember I like had to force myself. I'm like, I'll give it a few episodes, and then by episode 3, I'm like, oh, I'm so fucking in. I think that's how Twin Peaks works. You get to episode 3, and you're like, oh, I'm in, and then when you rewatch it,
it's like trying to get used to black coffee.
Oh, exactly. Rewatching episode 1, it's like, oh, this is so good. They introduced 40 plot lines and it works. But yeah, if I had to get somebody to be like, hey, you should watch a David Lynch thing, I would probably recommend Blue Velvet before anything else.
And scene.
Well, we still have a lot of time left. We did not have as much to say about these 2 movies as we thought we would.
But we do have a little bit to say.
About American Psycho. Probably about 15 minutes to talk about American Psycho.
Okay.
Than us.
Well, you just read the book.
I just read the book.
You've seen it before.
I've seen it before.
Well, how was your standing with the film before reading the book?
I liked it. I had seen it like once or twice when I was a younger man, probably around the time I had, watched 7, so I liked it probably the same amount. You get, basic strokes, you get the same thing in a little book and the movie. It's, this insane man.
I think they just lean into different things.
Yes, exactly. And this is maybe the first time I guess with fresh eyes, because it's been a while since I've seen the movie. I read the book. Day I finished the book, we watched the movie. And that really hindered how much I liked the movie.
Yeah.
I still like the movie. But getting right off the book and then watching the movie, I'm like, this is kind of silly.
Yeah.
And they put some stuff out of order that I don't like.
Yeah.
My biggest complaint would be at the beginning, he's, doing his face care routine and talking about how he, those long American Psycho explanations about just very mundane things about self-care and stuff like that. And he's like peeling the face mask off. And he's like, there's an idea of a Patrick Bateman. You can shake my hand and feel warmth, and you can look in my eyes, but there's no one behind there. I am simply not there. That happens toward the end of the book. The beginning, through most of the book, he is still, for as much as you can say, he's a person. He has thoughts and he has emotions, but then he starts to break as the book goes on and become more and more insane. The movie starts, and he's like, I'm at a breaking point and some insane shit's gonna happen, and then everything in the book happens where he's in that state of mind still, so it's a little harder to connect with him and a little harder to feel where he is in the movie. I still think it works in a different way, but it just feels a little strange because very noticeable, book to movie. Almost 100% of the dialogue in this movie, I think 100% of the dialogue in this movie is straight from the book. And when it's taken out of the context and he's put in a different situation mentally and he's saying these things, it feels a little different.
Yeah.
But overall, I would say the movie is funnier. I do enjoy it that way. I feel like, they're both black comedies, but I feel like the movie's a black comedy and the book is like that, paint that NASA invented that absorbs all lights, so there's literally no reflection on it. You can't tell which way it's facing or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like I've been saying since I finished reading the book, I've been telling you, the thing about the book is it makes, I don't know about anybody else, but it makes me feel like a psychopath reading it.
Oh yeah. Because
he'll just go on. A majority of the book is him, explaining what people are wearing or what the restaurant looks like, or a whole chapter about how Genesis is very important, and then he'll hit you with an insane thing that in no context is funny, except for after having all this boring just derivative shit about Wall Street and consumerism and all that, and just be like, and that's why Genesis, after 20 pages of Genesis, being like, and that's why Genesis is the most important band of the 1980s. Trying to cook and eat 2 girls. That's it's I don't know. It just puts you in a weird mindset that I think the movie never does.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe the movie doesn't need to do that. I feel like, you get something different out of the movie.
Yeah.
They're the same basic strokes. Like I said, the movie I think the movie's pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it reminds me more of like Heathers or Clue, or even to a degree like Pink Flamingos, right? Because it's like kind of making you laugh. It's something you probably shouldn't laugh at, but obviously a way less offensive version of that. And yeah, having read the book, 100%. I think it leads in. It leans way more into like, that thing that we've talked about in horror films, or whatever. It's that thing where it's like, oh, here's this fucked up thing. Now look at it for like 2 minutes. So you're just reading these chapters. You're like, oh god, okay, I get it. Oh my, I get it. Okay, yep, I get it. Ah, jeez, Louise. Whereas, the movie 100% leans more into just being kind of like a comedy, a black one at that, and I think it really succeeds. Like, I could mention things like there's that point where like, Patrick goes on about like, well, we need to end world hunger and this, that, and the other. But I think, there's definitely been times where I've watched this movie a bit younger and I'm like, oh, okay, so they're trying to humanize him a bit so you like him. But the older I get, I'm like, no, it's exactly like, the bum scene, which is basically a personification of a someone sitting at a table like you and I do now, and they're like, why don't they just get a job, right? It's supposed to be satirical and be like, well, they can say that they want to help this homeless man, but this is basically what they're doing, and if you want to take it even farther, they might as well be shooting them in the street. But anyways, the thing I think about even more than any of that stuff is, him trying to feed the cat to the ATM and the woman be like, hey, what are you doing? And then he just shoots the woman. Or, chasing a hooker down the street butt naked in white fucking, what are they called? Fucking Skechers with a chainsaw. Or, when he finally axes, God, what's his fucking name? He spends the whole movie Paul
Allen. It's Allen and Owen in the book. It's different in the book and the movie. But,
Paul Allen. Like when he's like, hey, Paul, axes him. He's like, try getting the reservation at Dorsia now, you fuck.
I think it is probably the most iconic, but I think it's the best scene in the movie.
Yeah.
It's so, Christian Bale just nails it.
Do you have like a dog or like a little chow?
No, I do not, Paul. Or like, I love when he's like talking to him about,
is that a raincoat?
Is that a raincoat? Yes, it is, Paul. It's so good.
I will also shouts out to, goddamn, Willem Dafoe. That's his name.
Ooh, Willem Dafoe. Love Willem Dafoe.
Those scenes are great. The story is that they shot 3 different versions of it, right? One where he's acting as if he believes Patrick, one as if he acts indifferent to Patrick, and one as if he's suspicious of Patrick. And I do love that, like, shot to shot, you get a totally different vibe.
Yeah.
I really do like that. I think that plays very well. I even like scenes where he's like Scrooge fucking in like an overcoat with like a cigar, and he's like, clean my sheets. I don't understand what you're saying to me, because she's speaking Korean or whatever it is, and his friend comes in and he's like, oh my god, what is that? And he's like, it's cranberry juice, can you please just, I have to be uptown, whatever. Or that fucking, and the best time that it lands, because I think he uses it multiple times, I have to return some videotapes, but I think that's isn't that what he says when God, I cannot remember the character's name, but his gay colleague
Lewis
that thinks he's coming on to him. Yes, Lewis, right? And he's like, where are you going?
Carruthers.
Lewis Carruthers. He's like, where are you going? And he's like, I have to return some videotapes.
Yeah. And
like, that's probably my favorite delivery of that line, which is hilarious.
Yeah, it's something that comes through from the book into the movie that I really like. Yeah, it's one of those things where this is kind of the big problem I have between the movie and the book, which I feel like it's not that much of a problem. I feel like it's just this way for the movie and it works better in the movie. But I feel like in the movie, again, he's just this psychopath who is trying to blend in with all these Wall Street people.
Yeah.
And he can, because that's just the nature of that, that circle, that like.
That's the sense I got from the book, but in the movie, I'll agree with you, maybe even take the words out of your mouth. It feels like he's the outcast that nobody likes.
Does it?
Yeah, because nobody even recognizes him. They always think they're talking to someone else. They're always like, oh, that fucking lame-o Patrick Bateman.
Well, what I think it is, everyone confuses him for that, and in the book, he confuses other people for other people, and everyone's confusing him. And in the movie, I feel like it's like, this is the perfect place for this kind of person to exist in.
Yeah.
Because no one's really held accountable.
Yeah.
People aren't what people care about. So he can just kind of slip in there and go unnoticed, and
do
that's
whatever
how
he
it
wants.
works. I feel like in the book, that's just where he is naturally in life, and yes, he is this insane person, and to the extent where they're always explaining everybody's clothes in such great detail, everybody feels exactly the same. And people mistake people for other people. And so, yeah, same thing with the movie. He can just kind of fit in and blend in there, but it feels like he's one of these people that becomes, a psychopath.
Yeah.
Well, he is at the beginning of the book. They don't tell you, but do you get what I'm trying to say? And
yes.
In the movie, it just feels like this is a perfect place for this psychopath to exist.
Yeah.
And in the book, it's the same way, but also at the same time, he's kind of a psychopath because he's in there. Like that's helping propel it instead of just being like, ooh, you never know. That's how fucked up these guys are.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying, but like I say, I was a little surprised that you didn't feel the same way, because I feel like the movie plays it up almost for empathy more than the book does.
Yeah.
Like, I almost feel empathetic to Patrick. Like, man, like he doesn't have any real friends. They don't even realize him. Whereas in the book, I got much more of a sense of, the idea that like he could slip in, yada yada yada, right?
Yeah. That's what I was going to get at. Is the videotapes line. It's something that I don't know if it's done on purpose or it's something that I'm reading into, but it's one of those things where somebody else says that, and then throughout the book he uses that as an excuse. Like,
that's great.
I need to return some videotapes.
Yeah,
and I get that.
Yeah,
I get that from the movie. That's just something that he hears people saying. So he says, but it just feels like, since from the beginning he's like, there's nobody behind these eyes. Yeah. That it just feels like this animal and this predator using that as an excuse. Whereas in the book, he's an insane person being like, well, other people say that, so I should say that because I'm trying to fit in with all these people still. And in the book, he very much, I think he says a few times, like, just like he's always calling women hard bodies because everybody else does. And I think there's a line in the book, I think it's when he's trying to eat them, spoiler alert, these two bodies, that he's like, and even though what I'm doing is, I even realize this is messed up, I just have to remind myself, these women, these hard bodies, they're just meat. They're just girls. And that fits into, just the general culture and the way everybody perceives everything.
Yeah.
And that, circle of people. I don't know. What's the word I'm looking for, Chris? And that date and time and that space.
Yeah, that era, that social circle, that,
exactly.
That bit of the culture, that corner of culture. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the, whoa, did he do it, did he not do it, and do you pick a side? And what side is that?
I think it is more interesting if he did it.
Yeah.
And he's just an insane person, but I like that it works both ways.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way, like, the book and the movie kind of presented it to you, like, there's no way he's ever going to get caught because it's just the way things work here. And he's so insane. There's no way that he's going to even catch himself, that he knows that he actually did it or not. So I think it works pretty well that you don't get an answer to it, but I do, in my heart of hearts, I think it's much more interesting if he actually did it.
Yeah, that's entirely fair to say. I will say I love that little twist, mainly just because, like, in the movie it's hilarious. I don't remember exactly how it goes in the book, but there's that point where he's confessing to his lawyer, and he's like, ugh. And I ate some of their brains. And I just love that while he's doing it, he's trying to, like, downplay it a little bit by saying, like, some of their brains. And, like, I've killed a few people, and I tried to eat some of their brains and stuff, and it's very funny. And it's a genuine great, I think it's pretty one-to-one in the book. But anyways, I think it's a great twist when he's like, you couldn't have killed Paul Allen. I had lunch with him in London 2 weeks ago. But it also plays into what you're saying, where people mistake people all the time. Yeah. But I feel like I remember in the movie, or maybe it's in the book, that Paul Allen actually does show up. But again, it's one of those things where people confuse people all the time. So even if Patrick were to see Paul Allen, is he actually seeing Paul Allen?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So yeah, I would agree with you that it's much more interesting. I would say in general, I always took it to be the most applicable version, in the sense that, like, this is just a look back at the underbelly of all these Wall Street cats, and that no, he didn't do it, but this is the personality type that we're dealing with when it comes to, this might as well be any Wall Street man's story, But you're right also that it's more interesting if he does do it. Yeah. And overall, I'm going to say B-B.
Exactly what I was going to say. I'm going to give it a B.
Right in there.
I'm going to give the book an A, though.
Yeah, book's great.
I love the book.
Yeah, decent. I don't know how to recommend it to people.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Like, I was explaining it to my brother-in-law yesterday. Like we said, the most iconic scene in the movie where he kills Paul Allen is very funny. It has a moment or two in the book, maybe, I think.
Yeah.
But, yeah, in the movie, he hits him with the axe a couple times. Try getting a table at Dorsey now, you fuck. And takes the jacket off and smokes a cigar. In the book, he's, like, trying to cut his head in half with the axe from his mouth. And they're almost giving you, like, detail from axe
You give me
swing
too much
to
detail in general.
Yeah, and that's why I said it makes you feel like an insane person.
Yeah.
Because they give you too much detail with everything.
Yeah. I mean, just talking about the book a bit, I mean, like you said, not sure if I'm cooking this right, but I've never cooked human before, so I don't know,
Also, I've never cooked anything before. So,
cooked anything before, right? Or, like I say, like, I think you were describing another scene where, and I remember it, but again, it's been years since I've read the book, where he's talking about, like, fucking one of the heads.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Sorry for our more sensitive listeners. He fucks one of the heads in front of one of the girls who's still alive.
Yeah.
And then it's still hard after he's done. He's like, so I walk around with it a little bit with my hands up in the air.
Awful. Yeah, maybe this should be one where we go back and be like, hey.
Yeah.
Content warning.
Yeah, exactly. But something I sorry, this is just a book podcast now. Something I think was done really, really well in the book that they do in the movie, because, there's an escalation. You don't just start with him killing people, but you get these little hints here and there that he is this person that kills people. Like, he goes to a laundromat with the sheets that are covered in blood. But in the book, again, it's so just mundane and just so much talk about dinner plans and this and that. And they sprinkle it in just a little bit here and there. Like, I think the first one that really, like, caught me off guard or catches you off guard is he's like, yes, and then I have to return some videotapes. And then I returned videotapes, and I rented Sluts Fuck Volume 4. And also, I can't remember what the movie's called, but it's like...
Well, it's like missing. In post, I've realized that we lost this part, so our apologies. And our conversation about American Psycho wasn't going anywhere anyways. So as far as I'm concerned, that's that, Mattress Man. If you need more soup, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or go to our website, eatingsoupalone.com. And until next time,